Please subscribe to my channel. This is my sincere request to you, honey. I drove to New York for a birthday surprise, but found a silent house. The fifth call came from a nurse whispering that my sister was critical. While she fought for her life in surgery, her husband toasted champagne on the yacht we gave them. I did not scream. I turned his life into a business transaction to bankrupt him. In the end, it was not the lack of money that destroyed him, but the secret my sister had kept. My name is Violet Holmes. I am 37 years old, and for the better part of a decade I have served as the Chief Operating Officer for the Stonebridge Meridian Group. My job description, if stripped of its corporate gloss and six-figure vocabulary, is essentially that of a high-stakes mechanic. When a supply chain fractures in Southeast Asia, I am the one who flies in to splice the wires back together. When a PR crisis threatens to capsize a merger, I am the one who navigates the ship through the storm. I am paid to be the calmest person in the room. I am paid to believe that every variable can be controlled, every risk calculated, and every outcome managed with enough foresight and capital. But on that crisp Saturday morning in late October, as I drove my Audi north from Philadelphia toward New York City, I was not thinking about risk management or quarterly projections. I was thinking about balloons. Specifically, I was thinking about whether 33 balloons would be excessive for a woman who claimed she had outgrown birthdays, or if it was the exact amount of ridiculousness required to make her laugh. The drive up Interstate 95 was a tapestry of burning oranges and deep reds. The autumn foliage was at its peak, painting the world in colors that felt vibrant and alive. I had cleared my schedule for the entire weekend, a feat that required 3 weeks of advanced planning and the delegation of authority to 2 different vice presidents. This was for Haley, my younger sister, my only sister. Haley Carrion was the antithesis of everything my life represented. Where I was rigid, she was fluid. Where I built structures, she chased tides. She was a photographer, specifically specializing in fine art oceanography. She spent half her life submerged in salt water, capturing the way light fractured beneath the surface of the Atlantic. She was warm, chaotic, and relentlessly optimistic. She was the only person in the world who could call me at 2:00 in the morning to talk about a dream she had about a giant squid, and I would actually listen. On the passenger seat beside me sat a box wrapped in matte silver paper. It was not a luxury handbag or a piece of diamond jewelry, though I could have easily afforded either. It was a specialized underwater housing unit for her favorite camera lens paired with a voucher for an advanced free diving photography workshop in the Keys. It was practical, specific, and exactly what she had whispered about wanting 6 months ago over a glass of wine. I smiled as I glanced at the box. I could already picture her face, the way her eyes would crinkle at the corners, the way she would tackle me in a hug that smelled like sea salt and vanilla. I exited the highway and navigated the dense rhythmic grid of Manhattan. The city was waking up, the sidewalks teeming with the Saturday brunch crowd and tourists wrapped in scarves. I made my way toward the townhouse Haley shared with her husband. Derek, we meaning our parents, and I had helped them secure the place shortly after their wedding. It was a beautiful narrow brownstone that cost more than my first 3 apartments combined. But we wanted her safe. We wanted her secure. When I pulled up to the curb, the first thing I noticed was the stillness. Usually, Haley's home radiated energy. Even from the street, you could typically sense movement. She was the type of person who threw the windows open in October because the air tasted crisp. She played jazz records loud enough to bleep through the glass, but today the windows were shut tight. The heavy velvet drapes, which I knew she usually pulled back the moment the sun touched the horizon, were drawn completely, sealing the house like a vault. I checked the dashboard clock. It was 11 in the morning. They should have been awake. Derek, for all his faults, and I kept a mental itemized list of them, was an early riser who liked to project the image of a busy entrepreneur. Haley was usually up with the sun to catch the morning light. I killed the engine and stepped out. The air was biting, a cold wind funneling down the street. I grabbed the silver box and walked up the steps, my boots clicking rhythmically against the stone. I rang the bell. I waited. I rearranged the bow on the box. I checked my reflection in the dark glass of the door. I rang the bell again. Silence. A small frown creased my forehead. I pulled out my phone and dialed Paley. It rang 4 times before clicking over to her voicemail. A recorded voice, bright and breathless, filled my ear. "Hi, you have reached Haley. I am probably underwater or in the dark room. Leave a message." "Hey, Hales," I said to the recording, keeping my voice light. "I am standing on your front porch. I know you said no surprises, but I am the older sister, so I'm allowed to break the rules. Open up. It is freezing out here." I hung up and waited another 5 minutes. A knot of irritation began to form in my chest. Maybe they had gone out for coffee. Maybe Derek had dragged her to one of those networking brunches he was so obsessed with, where men in expensive suits talked about leveraging assets they did not actually own. I called Derek. It went straight to voicemail. No ring, just an immediate mechanical click. That was odd. Derek Vaughan lived attached to his phone. He treated every vibration in his pocket like a summons from the president. I sat down on the top step, the cold stones seeping through my coat. I watched the street. A woman walked a golden retriever. A delivery truck rumbled past. Normally aggressive, indifferent normally. 30 minutes passed. The irritation began to curdle into something heavier. My instincts, the same ones that alerted me when a quarterly report was hiding a deficit, began to prickle. This was not just rude. This was uncharacteristic. Haley knew I was coming to the city. Even if I had not given a specific time, she would not just vanish. I stood up and pressed my ear to the heavy wood of the door. Nothing. No footsteps, no hum of the refrigerator. It felt hollow. I dialed Haley again. Third call voicemail. Fourth call voicemail. I walked back to my car, tossing the gift onto the passenger seat with less care than before. I sat behind the wheel, the leather cold against my back. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel. 1, 2, 3, 4. I dialed the 5th time. I told myself that if she did not answer, I would drive to her favorite cafe on the corner. I told myself I was overreacting. I was Violet Holmes, the woman who managed crises, and therefore I saw crises where there were none. The phone rang once, twice, then the ringing stopped. The line opened. "Haley." I exhaled, the tension in my shoulders dropping instantly. "My God, you scared me. I am outside, and this is not Haley." The voice was female, but it was not my sister. It was efficient, clipped, and underscored by a background noise I recognized instantly. It was the rhythmic, chaotic hum of machinery and distant voices. I froze. My hand gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "Who is this?" "This is Tanya Briggs," the woman said. "I am a charge nurse at Harbor East Medical Center. I am speaking on a cell phone found in the personal effects of a patient admitted through the emergency department. Are you a relative?" The world outside my car window seemed to tilt on its axis. The colors of the autumn leaves drained away, leaving everything gray and sharp. "I am her sister," I said. My voice sounded foreign, hollow, and distant. "I am Violet Holmes. What happened?" "M. Holmes, your sister was brought in this morning following a vehicular accident." The nurse said her tone was practiced, the kind of voice trained to deliver devastation without trembling. "She has sustained significant trauma. She is currently in critical condition." "Is she—" I could not finish the sentence. The word stuck in my throat like a shard of glass. "She is alive," Tanya Briggs said quickly, anticipating the question. "She has just come out of emergency surgery to address internal hemorrhaging. We are moving her to the ICU as we speak. You need to get here now." "I am coming," I whispered. "I am in the city. I am coming. Bring identification," the nurse added. "An MS. Holmes, does she have a spouse?" "We have been trying to reach a Derek Vaughan listed in her emergency contacts, but we have had no success." The mention of his name sent a spike of cold fury through the panic. "He is her husband," I said. "He should be there. Is he not there?" "No one is here," Tanner said. "Just her." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a second, my brain struggling to process the data. Accident, surgery, hemorrhaging, critical. The words were abstract, terrifying concepts that refused to settle into reality. Haley was supposed to be opening the silver box. She was supposed to be laughing. She was not supposed to be bleeding on a table in a building I had never visited. I started the car, the engine roared to life. a guttural sound that matched the scream rising in my chest. I pulled away from the curb, not checking my blind spot, cutting off a taxi that honked aggressively. I did not care. I drove with a recklessness that would have terrified my usual self. I ran a yellow light that was turning red. I weaved through traffic on the avenues, my eyes darting between the GPS on my dashboard and the road. Every red light felt like a personal insult. Every pedestrian crossing the street felt like an enemy of time. I looked over at the passenger seat. The silver box slid slightly as I took a sharp turn. The underwater camera housing, the photography course, the thoughtful, perfect gift. It looked grotesque now. It looked stupid. It was an artifact from a timeline that had just been severed. Who cared about aperture settings when lungs were failing? Who cared about the refraction of light when a body was broken? I wanted to throw it out the window. I wanted to smash it. The GPS chirped. Arriving at destination on right. Harbor East Medical Center loomed like a fortress of glass and concrete. It was an ugly building, functional and imposing. I abandoned my Audi in the emergency drop-off zone, tossing the keys to a stunned valet without waiting for a ticket. Keep it, I snapped. Or maybe I just thought it. I was already moving. I ran. I am not a runner. I wear tailored suits and Italian leather heels. But I ran through the automatic doors. The blast of climate-controlled air hitting me, and then it hit me. The smell. It is a smell you never forget. No matter how many years pass. It is the scent of isopropyl alcohol, floor wax, stale coffee, and human misery. It is the smell of a place where people bargain with God. It slapped me across the face, harsh and chemical, stripping away the last layer of my denial. I sprinted past the reception desk, ignoring the security guard who started to rise from his chair. "I see you," I demanded, breathless, staring at the directory on the wall. "Third floor." I hit the elevator button, hammering it repeatedly as if the force of my finger could summon the car faster. When the doors opened, I stepped into the hallway of the intensive care unit. It was quieter here. The silence was heavy, pressurized. It was the silence of machines breathing for people who could not breathe for themselves. I walked down the long corridor, my heels clicking on the linoleum, the sound echoing like gunshots. I looked at the room numbers, 301, 302, and then I saw the nurse's station and a woman who looked like she carried the weight of the world in her clipboard, Tanya Briggs. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. She did not need to ask who I was. The terror on my face was identification enough. She simply pointed to a room at the end of the hall. I walked toward it. My legs felt like lead. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic, desperate rhythm. I reached the door of room 304. I put my hand on the handle. The metal was cold. I pushed it open. The room was colder than the hallway. That was the first thing my skin registered before my eyes could even process the image in front of me. It was an artificial, sterilized cold, the kind that keeps bacteria at bay and preserves things that are on the verge of expiring. I walked to the side of the bed. My brain, usually so adept at categorizing data and finding solutions, simply stalled. It refused to acknowledge that the person lying on the mattress was Haley. The woman in the bed looked like a rough sketch of my sister, a drawing erased and redrawn by a shaky hand. Her face, usually flushed with sun and life, was the color of old parchment. There was a tube taped to her mouth, forcing air into her lungs with a mechanical hiss and click that was terrifyingly rhythmic. Hiss, click, pause, hiss, click, pause. It was the only sound in the world. A dark purple bruise bloomed across her left temple, disappearing into her hairline. Her arm, resting on top of the thin hospital blanket, was a map of wires and plastic lines. Fluids were dripping into her. Medicines were keeping her heart beating at a pace that flashed in neon green numbers on the monitor above her head. I reached out to touch her hand, but I stopped Centum from her skin. I was afraid I would break her. She looked that fragile. I was afraid that if I made contact, the reality of it would travel up my arm and stop my own heart. I forced myself to do it. I laid my hand over hers. Her skin was dry and cool. It did not squeeze back. "I am here." "Hales," I whispered. My voice cracked, a jagged sound in the quiet room. "I am right here." She did not move. The machine just kept hissing. This was not the sister who danced in the kitchen while cooking past her. This was not the woman who laughed so hard she snorted. This was a body fighting a war it was currently losing. The door behind me opened with a soft swish of air. I turned to see a man in a white coat entering. He looked young, perhaps in his late 30s, but his eyes were old. They were the eyes of a man who had told too many families that their world had ended. He held a tablet against his chest like a shield. "MS. Holmes?" he asked. "Yes," I said. I did not let go of Haley's hand. "I am Dr. Evan Hart," he said, stepping closer to the foot of the bed. He did not offer a handshake, which I appreciated. This was not a business meeting. "I was the lead surgeon on your sister's trauma team." "Tell me," I said. "Do not give me the soft version. Just tell me." Dr. Hart nodded. He looked at the monitor, then back at me. "She arrived with significant blunt force trauma to the abdomen and head. The impact caused a laceration to her spleen and liver, which resulted in massive internal hemorrhaging. That was our priority. We went in and managed to stop the bleeding. We repaired the damage to the liver and removed the spleen." "Removed?" I repeated. "It was necessary to stabilize her." He said surgically. "Her abdomen is stable. The bleeding has stopped. Her blood pressure is holding with the help of medication." But I asked. I could hear the butt hanging in the air. "But the head trauma is our primary concern now," he said. He tapped the tablet. "She has significant cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. We are monitoring her intracranial pressure closely. She is in a coma. MS. Holmes, it is too early to tell if it is medically induced by the sedatives we gave her or if it is a result of the injury itself. We have to wait for the swelling to go down before we can assess brain function." "Wait," I said. The word tasted like ash. "How long?" "Hours." "Days," he said. "The next 48 hours are critical. If the pressure spikes, we may need to intervene again. Right now, her numbers are—" He hesitated, searching for a word that wasn't cruel. "They are not beautiful, but they are stable." I looked back at Haley. Stable. It sounded like such a passive word for a woman who was fighting for every second of existence. "Where is her husband?" Dr. Hart asked. The question hit me harder than the medical diagnosis. I blinked, looking up at him. "He is not here. We have not seen him. The doctor said the nurses have been trying the number listed in her chart since she arrived 4 hours ago. We need consent forms signed. We need medical history. Usually, the spouse is the first one screaming at the front desk." I looked around the small, sterile room. There was a plastic chair in the corner. It was empty. There was no coat thrown over the back of it. There was no coffee cup on the side table. There was just empty space where Derek Vaughan should have been. "I will find him," I said. My voice was low. "He travels for work. He might be in a meeting. He might have his phone off." I was lying. I knew I was lying. Dr. Hart knew I was lying. He just nodded, his expression neutral. "If you reach him, tell him to get here. She needs him." The doctor left, and the room returned to its mechanical rhythm. I pulled the plastic chair up to the bedside and sat down. I pulled my phone out of my purse. My hands were shaking, a fine tremor that I could not control. I unlocked the screen and scrolled to Derek's name. I hit the call button. It rang. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Hi, this is Derek. I am crushing it right now. So, leave a message." The voicemail greeting was so arrogant, so typical of him, that I almost threw the phone across the room. I hung up. I dialed again. Silence. I looked at Haley. I tried to imagine the accident. The police said it happened at an intersection near the marina. A truck ran a red light. Or maybe she did. They were not sure yet. Metal crumpling, glass shattering, the terror she must have felt in that split second before the lights went out. Where was Derek? I thought back to the last time I saw him. Thanksgiving dinner 2 months ago. He had sat at my parents' dining table wearing a cashmere sweater that cost more than my father's first car. He had spent the entire meal talking about equity and leverage without ever actually explaining what his company did. "It is a consulting firm, Violet," he had said when I pressed him, flashing that toothpaste commercial smile. "We connect capital with opportunity. High-level stuff. You would get it if you worked in venture." I worked in operations for a multinational conglomerate. I understood business better than he ever would, but I had let it slide. I had let it slide because Haley had her hand on his knee and she looked happy. She looked at him like he hung the moon. Now that memory felt like a warning flare I had ignored. Connect capital with opportunity, I muttered to the empty room. What does that even mean, Derek? I dialed him a third time. Nothing. The nurse Tanya came in to check the monitors. She adjusted a drip line with efficient, gentle hands. Still no answer. She asked softly. No, I said. Did anyone call asking about her? Maybe he called the main switchboard. No one has called, honey, Tanya said. She looked at me with pity, and I hated it. I hated being the object of pity. We checked the logs. Just you. Just me. I sat there for another hour. The sun began to set outside the window, casting long gray shadows across the linoleum. I watched the numbers on the monitor change. Heart rate 82, oxygen saturation 98, blood pressure 110/70. I memorized them. They were the only things I could control. My phone buzzed in my hand. My heart leaped. Derek, it had to be. I looked down. It was not a call. It was a notification from a social media app. The algorithm, in its infinite cruel wisdom, had decided that since I followed Derek Vaughan, I would want to see his latest activity. Derek Vaughan just posted a photo. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the notification. A sick feeling, heavier than the grief, began to pull in my stomach. I tapped it. The screen filled with light. It was a photograph taken in bright, unfiltered sunshine. The composition was perfect. In the foreground, two crystal flutes filled with golden liquid were clinking together. In the background, the water was a deep, impossible blue. Derek was in the frame. He was wearing sunglasses and a white linen shirt, unbuttoned halfway down his chest. He was smiling, not a polite smile, a wide teeth-baring laugh, his head thrown back and wrapped around his waist. Resting familiarly on his hip was a hand, a woman's hand. The nails were painted a sharp electric crimson. You could see the edge of a sun hat and a cascade of blonde hair that was definitely not Haley's dark curls. I zoomed in. My breath hitched. I was not looking at the woman. I was looking at the background. I was looking at the specific grain of the teak wood deck. I was looking at the custom embroidered cushion visible in the corner of the frame. It was navy blue with silver piping. I knew that cushion. I had picked it out from a catalog 3 years ago. It was the Sila Larby, the yacht, the 40T cruiser my parents had bought for Haley and Derek as a wedding gift. A security blanket, my father had called it. Something they could charter out for income or sell if times got hard, an asset to ensure their future. Derek was on Haley's boat. I looked at the timestamp on the post just now. I looked at the location tag off the coast of Montauk. I looked at Haley. She was fighting to breathe. The machine hissed, clicked, hissed, clicked. She was dying in a room that smelled of bleach and fear, and her husband was drinking champagne on her boat 3 hours away, laughing with a woman who had electric red nails. The grief that had been crushing my chest suddenly changed state. It froze. It solidified into something hard and sharp, like a block of dry ice. He knows, I whispered. He had to know. The hospital had called him. He was the emergency contact. His phone wasn't off. He was posting on social media. He had seen the calls. He had seen the missed messages. He was ignoring them. This wasn't just negligence. Negligence is forgetting to check your phone. Negligence is sleeping through an alarm. This was active. This was a choice. He had looked at his screen, seen that his wife was in the hospital, and decided that his afternoon on the water was more important or worse. A cold thought snaked through my mind. Why was he so happy? Why was he celebrating who toasts with champagne when their wife is unaccounted for all day, unless he knew exactly where she was? Unless he knew she wasn't coming home. Coward. I hissed. I stood up. The plastic chair scraped against the floor. A harsh screech that made the nurse look up from the hallway. I walked to the window. I stared at the parking lot below, at the rows of cars under the street lights. I could call the police. I could scream at him on voicemail. I could drive to Montauk and drag him off that boat by his hair. No, that is what a grieving sister would do. That is what an emotional, hysterical woman would do. And Derek would love that. He would spin it. He would say he didn't have service. He would say the timestamp was wrong. He would say the woman was a client. He would make me look crazy. I took a deep breath. I inhaled the antiseptic air and let it fill my lungs. I pushed the image of Haley's broken body to the back of my mind, locking it away in a safe box where I kept my emotions during board meetings. I needed to be Violet Holmes' coup. I needed to handle this like a hostile takeover. You do not scream at the enemy when you find a breach in the contract. You do not let them know you are angry. You let them think they are safe. You let them think they are winning. And while they are distracted by their own arrogance, you dismantle their infrastructure brick by brick until the roof collapses on their head. He wanted to play games. He wanted to pretend he didn't exist. Fine. I looked down at the phone in my hand. The screen was still glowing with the picture of his laughter. I opened my text messages. I did not type in all caps. I did not use exclamation points. I did not ask about the woman. I did not mention the hospital. I typed 5 words. Where are you right now? I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. I slid it into my pocket. I turned back to my sister, whose chest rose and fell with the aid of a machine. Rest. Haley, I said softly, my voice devoid of the tremble it held 10 minutes ago. You just fight for your life. I will take care of the rest. I sat back down in the dark and I waited. The hunt had begun. I sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair in the waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a trapped insect. My phone was the only lifeline I had to the outside world, and I intended to use it as a weapon. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I had not used in 4 years. Caleb Strayrudd. Caleb was a former narcotics detective who had left the force after a disagreement with internal affairs regarding his methods. He was effective, expensive, and most importantly, invisible. He had helped Stonebridge Meridian Group vet a potential partner who turned out to be funneling money to offshore accounts in the Caymans. I needed that kind of excavation now. I dialed. He answered on the second ring, his voice growly and devoid of pleasantries. Holmes, he said, it has been a while. I have a job. Caleb, I said, skipping the small talk. It is personal and it is urgent. I am listening. I need a full financial autopsy on a man named Derek Vaughan. He is my brother-in-law. I want to know everything. Credit cards, hidden accounts, LLCs registered in Delaware, gambling debts, parking tickets. If he bought a pack of gum in 1999, I want to know what flavor it was. Is he the target? He is the target. I confirmed. I also need you to look into a timeline where he was for the last week, specifically today, and I need to know who he associates with. If there are business partners that look shady, find them. This sounds like a divorce prep, Caleb noted. It is an eviction, I corrected. From my family's life, can you start tonight? I am already typing his name. Caleb said, I will need a retainer wired. Done. $5,000 will be in your account within the hour. I hung up. The transaction felt cold, but it gave me a sense of agency. I was not just a grieving sister waiting for a doctor's report anymore. I was an operative. While I waited for the wire transfer to clear, I opened my laptop. The hospital Wi-Fi was slow, but it was enough. I logged into my own email server. Haley and I did not email. Often we were texters, but occasionally she would forward me articles about art exhibits or recipes. I searched for her name in my inbox and filtered by date. There were dozens of messages over the last year. Most were inconsequential, but as I read back, looking for patterns rather than content, I noticed a shift in tone starting about 6 months ago in April. She had sent me a link to a gallery space she wanted to rent for a show. The text in the body of the email read, I think I can make this work, but Derek says the liquidity is tight right now. I do not understand why. We just had a great quarter with the charter rentals. Do you think I should push him? I have replied, telling her to trust her gut. She never responded to that specific thread. In June, another email, this one with a subject line that just said, question, Violet, if you sign a document without reading the fine print because you are rushing to the airport, is it legally binding if you were under duress? Just curious for a friend. I froze. I remembered that email. I had called her immediately after reading it, and she had laughed it off, saying it was plot research for a friend writing a screenplay. I had believed her because Haley did not have a deceitful bone in her body. Now, staring at the pixels, the words under duress seemed to pulse in neon red. I closed the laptop as a nurse approached me. It was not Tanya, but a younger woman holding a clipboard. "MS. Holmes," she asked. "I am from the administrative office. We are processing your sister's admission details. We have the phone that was found on her person, but the paramedics noted a discrepancy in their report regarding her personal effects." "What kind of discrepancy?" I asked, standing up. "Well," the nurse frowned, tapping her pen against the paper. "According to the accident report, the impact occurred on the driver's side. The car was a mess, but usually in a crash like that, personal items are scattered." The MTs noted that the vehicle was remarkably clean. There was no purse, no wallet, no laptop bag, just the phone, which was found wedged under the seat. My stomach turned over. Haley never went anywhere without her oversized leather tote. It held her lenses, her sketchbooks, her wallet, and usually 3 different half-read novels. "Are you saying someone took it?" I asked. "We do not know," she said apologetically. "It is possible it was thrown from the vehicle if a window shattered, but the police report did not mention recovering a bag from the street. I just wanted to let you know in case you need to cancel her credit cards." "Thank you," I said. My voice was calm, but my mind was racing. A missing purse meant missing ID. It meant missing keys. Keys. I checked my watch. It was nearly 8:00 in the evening. The visiting hours for the ICU were technically over, but doctor, her heart had given me a pass. However, I needed to see something else. "I will be back in 2 hours," I told the nurse. I walked out to the valet stand, retrieved my car, and drove toward the Tribeca townhouse. The city was dark now, the skyline a glittering wall of indifference. I did not have a key. I had never needed one. Haley was always home, or she would leave one under the planter for me. But if her purse was gone, I could not risk that the spare was still there. I called the building manager, a man named Mr. Henderson, whom I had tipped generously over the years for keeping an eye on the place. He met me at the front door, looking tired and wearing a bathrobe over his pajamas. "M. Holmes, I was so sorry to hear about the accident," he said, unlocking the heavy oak door. "Is she okay?" "We are hopeful," I lied. "I need to get some insurance papers from her desk. I will be quick." "Take your time," he said, patting my arm. "Let me know if you need anything." He left me in the foyer. I locked the door behind him and turned on the lights. The silence I had felt earlier that morning was still there, but now inside the house it felt aggressive. I walked into the living room. It was immaculate. Too immaculate. Haley was an artist. She was messy. There should have been photography magazines on the coffee table. There should have been a blanket thrown haphazardly over the sofa. There should have been at least one coffee cup sitting on a coaster, but the surfaces were gleaming. The pillows were chopped and fluffed with military precision. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and bleach. Someone had cleaned this house recently. Very recently, I walked into the kitchen. The counters were bare. The drying rack was empty. I opened the dishwasher. Empty. I went to the trash compactor. It had been emptied. I opened the recycling bin under the sink. Bare. At the very bottom, beneath a crushed milk carton, was a single piece of paper. It looked like it had been torn in half, but not shredded. I reached in and pulled it out, careful to hold it by the corner. It was a receipt, or part of one. The header was missing, but the bottom half remained. The date was from yesterday. The amount was staggering $25,000. Below the amount, in the description field, it reads Consulting Services, Astrius Financial. I had never heard of Astrius Financial, and $25,000 was a lot of money for a consultation. I placed the paper on the counter and took a high-resolution photo of it with my phone. Then I carefully put it back exactly where I found it. I moved upstairs to the master bedroom. The bed was made. Not just made, but hospital corner tight. I went to the walk-in closet. Haley kept a small safe in the back bolted to the floor, where she kept her hard drives and a few pieces of jewelry inherited from our grandmother. I pushed aside the rows of winter coats and knelt down. The safe was there, but something was wrong. The keypad, usually a pristine gray, was scratched. Deep gouges ran along the side of the digital lock, exposing the raw silver metal underneath. It looked like someone had taken a screwdriver to it in a fit of rage or panic. Before realizing they knew the code, the door was slightly ajar. I used the sleeve of my coat to pull the handle. The door swung open, empty. No hard drives, no jewelry, no emergency cash. Even the velvet lining looked disturbed, as if hands had scrambled to claw everything out in seconds. I sat back on my heels, the breath leaving my lungs in a rush. This was not a robbery. A robber would have tossed the room. A robber would have taken the TV downstairs. A robber would not have wiped down the kitchen counters or made the bed. This was a purge. Someone had come in here, likely while Haley was bleeding in the intersection or immediately after, and sanitized the life out of this house. They had taken the evidence of her work, her financial security, and her history. I stood up and took photos of the safe, close-ups of the scratches, wide shots of the empty interior. I photographed the closet, the bedroom, the unnatural tidiness of the living room. I touched nothing else. I did not want my fingerprints confusing the narrative later. I needed to document the absence of things, which is the hardest evidence to prove. I left the house exactly as I found it. I locked the door and walked back to my car, the cold wind biting at my cheeks. When I got back to the hospital, the ICU was dimmer. The night shift had taken over. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors was the lullaby of the damned. I walked back into Haley's room. She had not moved. She looked smaller now, as if the bed was consuming her. I stood over her, looking at the bruise on her temple. I thought about the email under duress. I thought about the $25,000. I thought about the scratch safe and the missing bag. And then I thought about Derek, laughing on a boat, holding a glass of champagne. You did not just crash, did you? I whispered to her sleeping face. I pulled the blanket up to cover her shoulder, tucking it in gently. If this is his doing, Haley, I swear to you I will not just sue him. I will not just divorce him for you. I will dismantle him. I will take every brick he has used to build his fake little empire, and I will crush him with it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out. It was a text from Khaled. No greeting, just 3 sentences that made the hair on my arm stand up. I ran the preliminary on Vaughn. Do not let him near her accounts. The guy is not just broke. He is drowning, and the sharks are swimming close. I looked at the message, the blue light illuminating my face in the dark room. Drowning, I repeated softly. I looked at Haley's monitor. Her heart rate was steady. I sat down in the plastic chair. I did not sleep. I watched the door, waiting for a husband who I knew was never coming and planning a war that I was absolutely going to win. The email from Khaled Strad arrived at 4 in the morning. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria nursing a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The subject line was blank. The attachment was a 50-page PDF file simply titled Subject Vor Financial Prelim. I opened it. If I had expected a scandalous diary of affairs and hotel receipts, I was disappointed. This was not a romance novel. It was a forensic accounting of a disaster. It was an autopsy of a man's character told entirely through numbers, and the numbers were screaming. I read the executive summary first. Caleb wrote with the dry, cynical precision of a man who had seen everything. Subject is not as claimed a managing partner at any registered venture capital firm. The entity Vorn Capital is a shell company registered in a strip mall in New Jersey. It has reported 0 operational income for the last 3 fiscal years. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the rows of transactions Khaled had somehow flagged. The business trips Derek took were not to Silicon Valley or London. They were to Atlantic City in Las Vegas. There were withdrawals consistent, heavy withdrawals from ATMs located inside casinos. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. But gambling was just the symptom. The disease was the debt. Derek Vaughan was leveraged to the hilt. He had maxed out 4 credit cards, all of which were likely hidden from my sister. But that was amateur hour. The real terror lay in the loans. He had taken out high-interest personal loans from non-traditional lenders. The kind of lenders who do not ask for a credit score, but do ask for the names of your family members. Then I reached page 12, and the air left the room. Asset leveraging and power of attorney. Attached was a scanned copy of a document signed 6 months ago. It was a general power of attorney granting Derek Vaughan full legal authority to act on behalf of Haley Carrion regarding all financial and property matters. I zoomed in on the signature. It was Haley's, but it was shaky. It lacked her usual bold flourish. I remembered that time period. Haley had been complaining of fatigue. She had told me she felt foggy and weak. I had told her to take vitamins. Derek had told her to sign a piece of paper so he could handle the boring stuff while she rested. He had weaponized her exhaustion. Using this document, Derek had secured a massive private loan 3 weeks ago. The principal amount was $750,000. The collateral listed was not his imaginary company. It was the Tribeca townhouse and the Sela larvae. He had mortgaged my sister's home and the boat my parents gave her to cover his own drowning existence. The loan had a predatory interest rate, and it was structured as a balloon payment. If he missed a payment, the lender could seize the assets immediately. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced myself to keep scrolling. I needed to see the bottom of the pit. Page 20, Insurance Policies. My hand froze on the trackpad. There was a new policy issued 90 days ago. It was a term life insurance policy on Haley Carrion. The coverage amount was $3 million. The beneficiary was Derek Vaughan. The policy had a double indemnity clause for accidental death. If Haley died in an accident, say a car crash, the payout would double to $6 million. I closed the laptop. I had to. If I looked at it for one more second, I was going to stand up and scream until my throat bled. This was not just financial infidelity. This was a business plan. The debt was the problem. Haley was the asset. Her death was the liquidation event. He needed $6 million to clear his gambling debts, pay off the loan sharks, and still have enough left over to play the grieving, wealthy widower on a yacht in the Mediterranean. I checked my watch. It was 4:30 in the morning. I did not care. I picked up my phone and dialed my parents' landline in Connecticut. I knew my father, Gordon, would be awake. He woke up at 4 every day to read the markets. Violet, his voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert. Is it Haley? Is she's stable, Dad, I said, my voice sounding like grinding stones. She is still in a coma, but the doctors say the pressure is holding. That is not why I am calling. What is it? I heard the rustle of sheets as my mother, Mary Ann, picked up the extension. I need you both to listen to me, and I need you to not speak until I am finished. I said, I have just received a report on Derek. I laid it out. I did not sugarcoat it. I told them about the gambling, the fake company, the mortgage on the house they had bought for their daughter, the power of attorney. When I got to the life insurance policy, I heard my mother make a sound I never wanted to hear again, a sharp wounded animal whimper. My father was silent, but I could hear his breathing change. It became heavy, ragged, dangerous. I am going to kill him, my father said. It was not a figure of speech. Gordon Carrion was a man who had built a manufacturing empire from nothing. He had a temper that he kept on a leash, but the leash had just snapped. I am getting in the car. I am going to find him, and you are going to do absolutely nothing. I snapped. You are staying in Connecticut until I tell you otherwise. Violet, did you hear what he did? My mother cried. He bet on her life. He is waiting for her to die. I know, Mom. I know. I closed my eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to ruin my focus. But if you go after him now, if you call him, if you confront him, we lose. He will claim the power of attorney was legal. He will claim the insurance was just prudent planning. He will lawyer up, and he will hide the money he has left. He will play the victim. Then what do? My father demanded. We go to war, I said, but we do it my way. We do it quietly. I need you to authorize a transfer of funds to a holding account I am setting up. I am going to hire the 2 most vicious lawyers in New York City, and we are going to trap him. By 9:00 that morning, I had turned a private conference room in the hospital, courtesy of a donation my company made years ago, into a command center. Sitting opposite me were Mara Kingsley and Jonas Pike. Mara was a civil litigator who wore Chanel suits and flayed people alive in depositions. She had a reputation for finding assets that people thought they had buried in the desert. Joners was a former district attorney, a criminal defense lawyer, who knew exactly how the police built a case and, more importantly, how to hand them one wrapped in a bow. I slid the printed report across the table. "I want to know if we have enough to arrest him," I asked Joners. Joners flipped through the pages, his face unreadable for fraud. "Maybe the power of attorney is the weak link. If he can prove she was lucid when she signed it, the loans are legal, even if they are immoral for the accident circumstantial. The insurance policy is suspicious as hell. But unless we can prove he tampered with the car, it is just a coincidence in the eyes of the law." "It is not a coincidence," I said. "I know that," Joners said, looking up. "You know that, but a jury needs more than timing. We need a smoking gun." "While Joners looks for the gun," Mara interjected, her voice smooth and sharp, "I suggest we take away his ammunition." "How?" I asked. "Balloon," Mara said, tapping the page with the $750,000 debt, the one secured against the townhouse and the Sea Lullaby. "This lender, Apex Capital Solutions, they are a hard money lender. They do not care about Derek. They care about their money. If he misses a payment, they foreclose." "He will not miss a payment if the insurance pays out," I said bitterly. "But the insurance will not pay out while there is an active investigation," Joners pointed out. "I can speak to my contacts at the precinct if we flag the accident as suspicious. The insurance company freezes the claim." "Exactly." Mara smiled. "And while the claim is frozen, Derek has no cash flow. He has no job. He has gambling debts. He will default on that loan within 30 days. I do not want the lender to seize Haley's house," I said. "They won't," Mara said, "because we are going to buy the debt." I looked at her, understanding dawning on me. "We set up a blind trust," Mara explained, "an LLC with a generic name. We approach Apex Capital and offer to buy the promissory note from them for full value. They will be happy to get their cash and walk away without the hassle of foreclosure. Once we own the note, we are Derek's creditor. We own the house. We own the boat," I whispered. "And we own him," Mara finished. "We can call the loan. We can freeze his assets. We can legally drag him into court and force him to disclose every penny he has spent. We can suffocate him." "Do it," I said. "Money is no object." My phone buzzed. It was Caleb again. "I have a visual on the boat. It is docked at the marina in Montauk. No sign of Vorm, but the crew is prepping for something." I picked up the tablet where I had saved the screenshot of Derek's Instagram post, the photo of the champagne, and the celebration. I looked at it again, staring at the details I had missed in my initial rage. The champagne flutes, the woman's hand, the blue cushion, but then I looked past them. In the background, reflected in the sliding glass door of the yacht's cabin, was a figure. It was faint, distorted by the curve of the glass and the glare of the sun. But it was there, a man. He was not wearing boating attire. He was wearing a dark suit, which was observed for a day on the water. He was standing with his arms crossed, watching Derek and the woman. He did not look like a friend. He did not look like a guest. He looked like supervision. I zoomed in as far as the pixels would allow. The man had a distinctive watch, gold, heavy, flashy, and he was holding a folder, a thick manila folder. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. "Derek isn't just a gambler," I said to the room, interrupting Mara and Joners, who were discussing the LLC structure. "He is working for someone." I turned the tablet around so they could see. "He is celebrating," I said, pointing to the reflection. "But that man is not celebrating. That man is waiting to get paid." "If that is the loan shark," Joners said, leaning in, his eyes narrowing, "or the broker who arranged the insurance, then Derek is not just a suspect. He is a liability to them. Which means," I said, standing up, "we have to destroy him before they decide to silence him. If he goes down, I want him alive to tell us exactly what he did to my sister." I looked at the image one last time. The celebration on the deck of the Sea Lullaby was a lie. It was a transaction, and I was about to void the contract. Doctor, Evan Hart found me in the small family waiting room adjacent to the intensive care unit. It was 3:00 in the afternoon on Sunday, more than 24 hours since I had arrived in New York. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the initial shock and the financial war room sessions was beginning to curdle into a dull, throbbing headache behind my eyes. "M. Holmes, doctor," Hart said. His voice was lower than usual. He did not have his tablet. He had his hands in the pockets of his white coat, and he closed the door behind him with a deliberate click. "Do you have a moment? We need to discuss some lab results that just came back from the toxicology screen." I stood up immediately. "Is she worse?" "She is the same," he said, gesturing for me to sit. He remained standing. "But we have been trying to understand the mechanism of the accident. The police report says there were no skid marks. That usually implies the driver did not brake. It implies they were unconscious or incapacitated before impact." "She was tired," I said, repeating the lie Derek had fed everyone. "She was exhausted." "Exhaustion does not do this," Hart said. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "When Haley was admitted, we ran a standard metabolic panel. Her blood glucose level was 32 mg per deciliter." I stared at him. I am not a doctor, but I know basic biology. 32 isn't bad, that is critically low. Hart confirmed. That is hypoglycemic shock. At that level, confusion sets in instantly. Vision blurs. Loss of consciousness follows within minutes. Seizures are common. Essentially, her brain was starving for fuel while she was behind the wheel. "Haley is not diabetic," I said slowly. "She has never had blood sugar issues in her life. She eats pasta. She loves chocolate." "I know," Hart said. His eyes were hard, professional but searching. "We ran a peptide test. It measures how much insulin the body is producing naturally versus how much is present in the blood. In a healthy person with low blood sugar, insulin production shuts off. Our insulin levels were sky high. The air in the room seemed to vanish." "What are you saying?" I asked, though the answer was already crawling up my spine like a spider. "I am saying that her hypoglycemia was likely exogenous." Hart said carefully, meaning caused by an external agent. It could be an insulin injection. It could be a high dose of sulfonylureas, drugs used to treat type 2 diabetes that stimulate insulin production. He paused, letting the weight of the accusations settle between us. "We are legally required to report suspicious toxicology findings to the authorities," Hart continued. "I have already spoken with the detective assigned to the traffic accident. This is no longer just a crash investigation, MS. Holmes. It is a medical inquiry." I nodded numbly. "Thank you, doctor." When he left, I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a cold, vibrating clarity. This changed everything. The financial fraud, the gambling, the yacht party. That was greed. That was a bad husband. But this was not greed. This was an execution. My mind raced back through the last few months. I replayed every conversation I had with Haley. I searched for the breadcrumbs I had missed because I was too busy being a CEO to be a sister. Then I remembered the text. It was from 3 weeks ago. I pulled out my phone and scrolled frantically, my thumb trembling. "Haley, Derek is on this new health kick. He bought this green powder from some biohacker guy. He knows. He makes me drink it every morning. It tastes like dirt, and it makes me feel dizzy for an hour. But he says it is a detox reaction." I had replied with a laughing emoji. "Tell him to drink it himself, Hilly. He says it is specially formulated for women, hormones or something." I feel like I'm going to pass out right now. Actually, must be working. I stared at the screen. Specially formulated. I stood up and walked to the nurse's station. Tanya was there organizing charts. "Tanya," I said when the paramedics brought her in, "did they bring any personal effects besides the phone? Any loose items from the car?" "Just a bag of clothes she had in the back seat," Tanner said. "We put it in the patient locker. Do you want to see it?" "Yes." She led me to a row of metal lockers. She unlocked number 14. Inside was a gym bag. I unzipped it. It smelled like Haley coconut shampoo and sea salt. Inside were yoga pants, a towel, and a water bottle. I checked the side pockets. Empty. I checked the main compartment. Nothing. I closed the locker and walked out to the hallway. I called Callum. "The supplement," I said the moment he answered. "Find out what Derek has been buying, specifically health supplements, performance enhancers, anything pharmaceutical." I am already on the credit card statements. Khaled said, I saw a recurring charge to a shell company called Vitality Prime Logistics. It sounds fake. Trace it. I ordered. I need to know what they ship. I need to know if they sell insulin or oral hypoglycemic agents on the gray market. Give me an hour, Khaled said. I hung up. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. The bottle wasn't in the car. He had cleaned the townhouse. He had cleaned the car. The receipt I found in the trash was for financial consulting. But there had to be others. He had removed the weapon. He had fed her poison in a glass every morning, calling it love, watching her get weaker, waiting for the moment her brain would shut down behind the wheel of a two-ton vehicle. He didn't need to cut the brake lines. He just needed to cut her sugar. The rage was a physical thing now. It was a burning coal in the center of my chest. I wanted to drive to Montauk. I wanted to find him on that boat. I wanted to smash a champagne bottle over his head and scream the truth until the police dragged me away, but I couldn't. Dr. Park said, likely, he said suspicious. He didn't say proof. Without the bottle, without a witness, Derek could claim Haley took the wrong medication by mistake. He could claim she was trying to lose weight. He could claim ignorance. I needed him to break. I needed him to panic. I needed him to make a mistake so large that even the most expensive defense attorney couldn't hide it. I walked back to the conference room where Mara and Jonas were working. Execute it, I said. Mara looked up from her laptop. The debt purchase. Everything, I said. We own the loan now. We are the creditor. Activate the acceleration clause. Demand full repayment immediately. And the credit cards, the ones attached to the joint account. We can freeze the main assets, Mara said, since you have temporary guardianship pending the emergency hearing we filed this morning. We can lock down Haley's accounts to prevent further fraud. Do it, I said. Cut him off. I want him to try to buy a sandwich and get declined. I want him to try to refuel that yacht and be told he is insufficient. It is done, Mara said, hitting the enter key with a satisfying clack. As of 10 seconds ago, Derek Vaughan is destitute. I sat down and watched the clock. I imagined the scene. He was probably still on the Sela Larby. The sun was setting. The air was getting colder. He would be reaching for his wallet to pay for another round of drinks or perhaps to pay off the man in the suit. 1 hour passed, and 2. I checked Derek's Instagram again. The photo of the champagne was gone. He had deleted it. 5 minutes later, a new story appeared. It was just a black screen with text. Family emergency. Please respect privacy. He is spieling it, Jonas said. Watching me. He tried to use a card. It bounced. He checked his balance. It is 0. He realized the yacht loan has been sold to a hostile entity. He is scared, I said. Do it. But scared men are dangerous men. I looked at the text message from Haley again. He makes me drink it every morning. My sister was lying in a coma because she trusted the man she married. She drank the poison because he handed it to her. The betrayal was so intimate, so absolute, that it made me want to retch. Caleb called back. I found the source, he said. His voice was grim. Vitality Prime is a front for a distributor in Mexico. They sell anabolic steroids, HGH, and yes, insulin, unmarked. No prescription required. I found a shipment record to a P.O. box in Derek's name 3 months ago. Do we have the contents of the shipment? I asked. Not explicitly. It is labeled as research peptides, but I found a forum user with the handle DV Venture asking about dosing for rapid metabolic crashes without detection. He asked for advice on how to kill her. I whispered. He was careful. Violet Kellogg warned. Usernames can be spoofed. IP addresses can be masked. It is strong intelligence, but it is not a conviction yet. We need the physical bottle or a confession. We will get it, I said. I spent the rest of the evening by Haley's bedside. I held her hand. I watched the numbers on the monitor. Glucose 110 normal safe because the nurses were controlling it, not him. I know what he did. I told her sleeping form. I know about the green drink. I know why you were dizzy. You were not sick. Ants. You were being poisoned. The machine hissed, clicked. I looked at her stomach, where the surgeons had cut her open to save her life. I looked at the bruises. I checked my phone. It was almost midnight. Derek still hadn't called. He hadn't called the hospital. He hadn't called me. He was likely scrambling, trying to figure out why his financial world had collapsed in the span of 4 hours. He was probably trying to call his loan shark, only to find out the shark had sold the debt to a ghost. My phone rang. I looked at the screen, expecting Caleb or Mara. It was an unknown number, area code 651. That was Long Island, Montauk. I stared at it for a second, my heart hammered against my ribs. Was it him? Was he finally calling from a payphone? I answered. "This is Violet." "Ms. Holmes." The voice was male, rough, whispering. The background was filled with the sound of wind and water lapping against wood. "Who is this?" I asked. "You do not know me," the man said. "I work at the marina. I am the night dockmaster. I saw your name on the emergency contact list for the slip rental of the Sea Larby." "Yes," I said, gripping the phone tight. "Is the auto there? Is Derek Vaughan there?" "That is why I'm calling," the man said. He sounded nervous. "The guy, Mr. Vaughan, he left about 20 minutes ago in a hurry. He looked manic. He was shouting at someone on his phone." "Where did he go?" "I do not know. He got into a car service, but MS. Holmes, that is not why I called." "Why did you call?" "Because he did something before he left. The dockmaster said he was down in the engine room. I heard banging metal on metal, and when he came up, he threw something into the water, something heavy. My blood ran cold. And MS. Holmes," the man continued, his voice dropping even lower. "After he left, I went to check the boat to make sure he secured it. There is water in the BJE, more than there should be, and I found something on the deck he must have dropped." "But," I demanded, "what did you find?" "It is a tablet," he said, "like an iPad. The screen is cracked, but it is still on and the map is open. But it is not a chart for sailing. It is a tracking app for a car." I stood up. "Keep that tablet. Do not touch it. Do not let anyone on that boat. I am sending someone to you right now." "You better hurry," the man said, "because the way the water is rising in the BG, I think he tried to scuttle her. I think he tried to sink the evidence." I hung up and sprinted toward the conference room. Derek wasn't just running. He was burning the ground behind him. He had tried to sink the Sea Larby, and he had dropped the device he used to track my sister. The game of cat and mouse was over. He was the rat, and he was cornered, and I was about to close the trap. The mechanics of revenge are surprisingly similar to the mechanics of a corporate acquisition. You identify the target's weak points, usually their liquidity or their ego, and you apply pressure until the structure collapses. There is no need for screaming. There is no need for drama. There is only the ruthless application of leverage. At 9 in the morning on Monday, Mara Kingsley, my civil litigation attorney, sat in the hospital conference room and pressed a single key on her laptop. "The acceleration clause is activated," she said, her voice as crisp as the paper the contract was printed on. "We have notified the lien holder, which is now us, that the debtor is in default due to a breach of the good standing covenant. We are exercising our right to seize the collateral immediately to protect the asset's value." In layman's terms, we had just stolen my sister's yacht back from her husband because we had purchased the debt from the predatory lender overnight using a shell company called Nemesis Holdings. We did not have to wait for a court hearing. The original loan agreement Derek had signed, the one he thought would save him, contained a provision that allowed the lender to secure the property without notice if there was reasonable suspicion of asset degradation. Trying to sink the boat definitely counted as degradation. I was not at the marina in Montauk. I was still in the ICU sitting 3 away from Haley holding a cup of lukewarm tea. I did not want to see Derek's face. I did not want to give him the satisfaction of seeing my rage. If I appeared, he could spin a narrative that I was a hysterical sister-in-law acting out of grief. He could play the victim. Instead, I let the law be the villain. Khaled Strad was my eyes and ears on the ground. He was parked in an unmarked sedan at the marina entrance, watching the scene unfold through a telephoto lens. He had an earpiece connected directly to my phone. "The repo agents are moving in." Caleb's voice crackled in my ear. "They are putting the chain on the propeller. The harbor master is posting the seizure notice on the gangway. It is bright orange. You cannot miss it." "Where is he?" I asked, keeping my voice low so I would not disturb the rhythmic hissing of Haley's ventilator. "He is at the Raw Bar across the street." Khaled said he is with two other guys. "Looks light. He is trying to celebrate early. He thinks the boat is sitting on the bottom of the harbor by now. He does not know the night dockmaster pumped the BG before the water got too high." "Wait for it," I said. I checked the time. The digital notification of the asset freeze and the bank account lockout should be hitting Derek's phone right about now. "He just checked his phone," Caleb reported. He stopped laughing. He's standing up. He looks confused. He is tapping the screen aggressively. I closed my eyes and visualized it. The decline message. The text alert from the bank saying access denied. The sudden realization that the credit card he was about to use to buy a round of oysters was nothing more than a piece of useless plastic. "He is running toward the dock," Caleb narrated. "He left his friends at the table. He is sprinting. Let him run." I said he is at the gate. "The key fob is not working. We deactivated it remotely 10 minutes ago." Khaled said he is shaking the gate. He is screaming at the security guard. The guard is pointing at the orange sticker on the boat. I could hear the faint sound of shouting in the background of Caleb's audio feed. It was a distant, tiny sound, but it was music to me. "He is calling the bank," Khaled said. I can read his lips. "He is saying that is my wife's. You cannot do this. That is my property." "It is not his property," I whispered. "It is the bank's property, and I am the bank." "He is panicking, Violet." Khaled said, "This is not just anger. He looks terrified. He is looking over his shoulder. He keeps checking the parking lot because he owes money to people who break legs, and his collateral just got chained to the dock." I said, "Keep watching him. Do not engage." I hung up the line with Caleb and turned to Mara. "What is the next step now?" "We wait for him to reach out." Mara said, "He has no access to funds. His vehicle is likely leased, so we can flag that next. But first, we need the physical evidence from the boat." While Derek was having his meltdown at the gate, unable to board the Sea Lullaby, Caleb had already secured something far more valuable than the hull itself before the seizure notice went up during the chaos of the morning shift change. Caleb had met with the lead technician of the Mariners Service Department. Caleb sent me the audio file of the interview while I sat there. I put my headphones in. The technician's name was Rodriguez. His voice was hesitant, nervous. "Look, Mr. Vaughan came in here about 8 days ago," Rodriguez said on the recording. "He was acting weird, impatient. He told us he wanted to upgrade the navigation system." "That is standard," Caleb's voice replied on the tape. "Yeah, but he didn't want an upgrade. He wanted us to disable the AIS, the automatic identification system, the tracker that tells the Coast Guard where the boat is. He said it was for privacy because his wife was a celebrity photographer and they wanted to avoid paparazzi." "Did you do it?" "No, it is illegal." I told him that. But here's the thing. He asked if there was a way to loop the data to make the GPS show the boat was at the dock even if it was 10 miles out. I told him no. He got angry and stormed out. And then I saw him later that day with a guy in a suit. They were down in the engine room for an hour. When I checked the logs this morning after the attempted sinking, someone had tampered with the breaker panel for the GPS. It was bypassed. If that boat had gone out, it would have been invisible. I paused the recording. My hand was trembling. He wasn't just planning to sell the boat or sink it for insurance money. He had been planning a trip where he needed to be invisible. Or perhaps he had planned to take Haley out on the water one last time to a place where no digital footprint could follow and ensure her accident was permanent. Khaled also sent a still image capture from the Mariners' security camera system, time-stamped 7 days prior. It showed Derek standing on the stern of the Sea Lullaby. Next to him was the man in the suit, the same man I had seen in the reflection of the champagne photo, but in this high-definition security shot. I could see his face clearly. He was thick-set, balding, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. He looked like a man who solved problems with a hammer. Derek was handing him a thick envelope. The man was tucking it into his jacket. It was a down payment. I said aloud, he was paying for a service. Suddenly, my phone rang in my hand. The screen flashed the name Derek Vaughan. The room went silent. Mara looked at me and nodded. Joners, the criminal attorney, put a finger to his lips and pointed to the recording app running on his own device. "Answer it," Joners mouthed. "Do not threaten, just listen." I swiped the green button and put the phone to my ear. I did not speak. I let the silence stretch, forcing him to fill it. Violet. Derek's voice was high, breathless. I could hear the wind of the marina in the background. "Violet, thank God. Are you at the hospital?" "I am," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Okay, listen. Something insane is happening," Derek said, the words tumbling out over each other. "I am down at the marina. I came to check on the boat because I wanted to get things ready to sell it. You know, to pay for Haley's medical bills. And there are these goons here saying the boat is seized. They say the accounts are frozen." "I know," I said. There was a pause, a heavy loaded silence. "You know?" Derek asked. His tone shifted instantly from frantic to suspicious. "What do you mean?" "You know, I mean that the bank called the loan." "Derek," I said, "they saw the risk profile. They acted. You have to stop them," he shouted. "Violet, you are the executive or whatever, right? You have connections. Call them. Tell them it is a mistake. That boat is the only thing we have left to liquidate. If they take it, we lose everything." I asked. "Haley is in a coma." "Derek, she is not losing anything. She is fighting to stay alive." "That is what I mean," he stammered. "I am trying to help her. I need that money for her treatments for the best specialists. Violet, you have to wire me $50,000 right now just to get the lawyers off my back so I can unfreeze the boat. I will pay you back as soon as the insurance settles." "The insurance?" I repeated. "You mean the life insurance?" "No, I mean the accident insurance for the car." He was lying. He was bad at it. "Violet, please. They are going to tow it away. I need cash now." I walked over to the window of the conference room. I looked down at the city streets below. People moving like ants, unaware of the monsters living among them. "Derek," I said, "I am not wiring you money. Art, I am not wiring you money. I am not calling the bank. I am not helping you save a boat that you were drinking champagne on yesterday while your wife was in surgery." "I wasn't." He started, then stopped. "You saw the post, Violet. That was an old photo. I was trying to project strength for the business." "Stop." I said. It was a command. "Just stop talking. You are misunderstanding everything," he said, his voice dropping into that slick, condescending tone he used when he wanted to charm someone. "You are emotional right now. You are upset. I get it. But you are making a mistake. We are on the same side here. I love her." "If you love her," I said, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white, "then why aren't you here? Why haven't you visited her once?" "I told you I am handling the finances. I'm trying to save our future." "There is no future, Derek." I said. "There is only the present. And in the present, your wife is lying in a bed with a tube in her throat. So here is my advice. Stop worrying about the boat. Stop worrying about the money. Focus on Haley, because if she wakes up, she will have a lot to say." If Derek said the word came out sharp, "What do the doctors say? Is she going to wake up?" He didn't sound hopeful. He sounded terrified. "That is none of your business," I said. "Violet, listen to me," he hissed, the mask slipping completely now. The charm was gone. The panic was back, but it was edged with a threat. "You do not know what you are doing. You need to unfreeze those accounts. I have obligations. I have people waiting. If I do not pay them, if I do not get that boat moving—" He stopped himself, but it was too late. "If you do not get the boat moving, what?" I asked. "What is the deadline, Derek?" "I have a deadline," he screamed, his control shattering. "I have a filing deadline for the taxes. If I miss it, the IRS will take everything. You are destroying us." "The IRS does not break kneecaps, Derek," I said calmly. "And the IRS does not meet you in the engine room to disable GPS trackers." Silence. Absolute dead silence on the line. "You are crazy," he whispered. "You are paranoid. I am hanging up. I am coming to the hospital. And when I get there, you better have a check ready or I will sue you for interference." "Come to the hospital," I said. "We will be waiting." I ended the call. I looked at Mara and Joners. Joners stopped the recording and saved the file. He said deadline, Joners said, looking up with a grim smile, and he admitted he has people waiting. That is not tax talk. That is conspiracy. He also mentioned a file. I noted. He said filing deadline, but he stumbled. He meant a file, a physical file. I thought about the man in the suit. I thought about the envelope. I thought about the missing safe contents. He promised someone something. I said he promised them a payout or he promised them documents, and the boat was the delivery vehicle. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Caleb. He is not coming to the hospital. He just got into a cab. He is heading west back toward the city, but he is not going to the townhouse. I'm tailing him. Let him go, I said to the room. He is running to his handler. He is going to try to explain why the plan failed, and when he does, he is going to lead us right to the rest of the rats. I walked back to the ICU room. Haley was still there, silent and still, but the air in the room felt different. The machinery didn't sound like a death knell anymore. It sounded like a countdown. I sat down and took her hand. He is scared. Hales, I whispered. He is running, and we are going to catch him. Caleb Strayer had located Derek 30 minutes after he fled the marina. He was not heading to the airport. He was not heading to our parents' home in Connecticut to beg for forgiveness. He had retreated to a short-term rental apartment in Queens, tucked away in a nondescript brick building in Astoria that smelled of boiled cabbage and old cigarettes. Do not go alone, Caleb said when I told him I was driving there. The man is cornered. Cornered animals bite. I am not going alone, I said. You are coming with me and I am bringing the papers. We arrived at the address just after midnight. The street was lined with double-parked cars and overflowing recycling bins. It was a far cry from the Tribeca townhouse or the polished deck of the Sela Larby. This was where Derek Vaughan went when the facade crumbled. This was the backstage area of his life. Caleb parked the car down the block. He checked the pistol holstered beneath his jacket, a habit from his Vice Squad days, though I had strictly forbidden him from using it unless we were under direct physical threat. I stay at the door, Caleb instructed. I am the witness. You are the principal. If he moves toward you, I step in. Otherwise, I am a statue. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway carpets were stained. I found Unit 4B and knocked. I did not pound. I knocked 3 times, calm and precise. There was shuffling inside. The peephole darkened as someone looked through. Then the sound of a chain sliding and a lock turning. The door opened. Derek stood there. The transformation was startling. In the 24 hours since the yacht photo, he had aged 5 years. His white linen shirt was wrinkled and stained with sweat. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with dark circles that spoke of a sleepless, frantic night. He looked at me, then at Caleb, standing silently behind my left shoulder. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. You found me, he said. His voice was. Congratulations. Did you bring the police? Not yet, I said. May I come in? He stepped back, leaving the door open. It was an invitation born of exhaustion. The apartment was a studio. It was a disaster. A suitcase lay open on the floor, clothes spilling out as if they had been thrown in by the handful. On the small kitchenette table, a bottle of scotch was half empty. Next to it was a laptop, the screen glowing with a spreadsheet that looked like a maze of red numbers. And everywhere there were crumpled receipts and legal pads covered in frantic scribbles. I walked to the center of the room. I did not sit down. I wanted to loom. What do you want, Violet? Derek asked. He walked to the table and picked up the glass of scotch. His hand was shaking. You took the boat. You froze the accounts. You turned off my credit cards. I tried to buy a Metro card an hour ago and it was declined. I had to hop the turnstile. Are you happy? I am not happy though, I said. My sister is in a coma. Happiness is not currently on my agenda. Then what is this? He gestured around the room with the glass, splashing amber liquid onto the floor. A victory lap. You want to see me squirm. I want the truth, I said, and I am here to give you one chance to tell it before the narrative is set in stone. There is no truth, he snapped. There is just an accident, a tragic accident, and a sister-in-law who has always hated me taking advantage of the situation to ruin me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a file folder. I tossed it onto the table right on top of his laptop. I know about the loans, Derek, I said. I know about Apex Capital. I know about the $25,000 consulting fee you paid to a shell company. I know about the power of attorney you bullied her into signing. He flinched. I didn't bully her. She trusts me. She trusted you. I corrected. Ass tense. And then there is the insurance. $6 million double indemnity. He laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. That is standard financial planning. I am a businessman. I mitigate risk. You created the risk. I said we know about the supplement, Derek. The green powder. We know about the hypoglycemia. The room went dead silent. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to roar. Derek froze. He set the glass down slowly. He turned to face me. His eyes were wide. The pupils dilated. You are crazy, he whispered. You are actually psychotic. You think I poisoned my wife. I think you drugged her, I said, my voice steady, cold, unyielding. I think you needed her to be compliant. I think you needed her confused so she would sign that power of attorney, and I think you miscalculated the dose or the timing, and she crashed the car before you were ready. That is insane, he said. That is liable. I will sue you. With what money? I asked. You do not have a lawyer, Derek. You do not have a retainer. You have a bottle of cheap scotch and a suitcase full of dirty laundry. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small length of the room. He looked like a trapped rat looking for a hole in the baseboards. You do not understand, he muttered. You have always been the perfect one, the corporate superstar. You do not know what it is like to be drowning. I was trying to fix it. I was trying to get us back to zero. By betting on her death. No, he shouted. He slammed his hand on the table. I didn't want her to die. I just needed time. I needed the assets to be liquid. So you disabled the GPS on the yacht. I said, why? Where were you going? He stopped pacing. He looked at me, and for a second I saw pure terror in his eyes. Not terror of me, terror of something else. I was going to fix it, he said. I had a deal, a transition. If I could just move the boat. Move it where? It does not matter now, he yelled. You chained it to the dock. You killed the deal. And the man in the suit, I pressed. The one you were celebrating with while Haley was in surgery. The one who was waiting for a payout. Who is he? Derek's face went pale. You saw him. I see everything. Derek, I have photos. I have logs. I have the marina technician on tape. He slumped against the counter. The fight seemed to drain out of him. He looked at the floor. It was an accident. He said softly, the car crash. It wasn't supposed to happen then. She was supposed to be at home. She was supposed to be sleeping. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept my face impassive. So, you admit you gave her something to make her sleep. I gave her a supplement, he insisted. But his voice lacked conviction to help her relax. She was stressed. I was stressed. If she was just out of it for a few days, I could handle the transfer. I could sign the papers. I could get the money to pay off the debt, and she would never have to know how close we came to losing the house. So, you drugged her to rob her. I said. I was borrowing. He pleaded. I was going to put it back, but then she got in the car. She wasn't supposed to drive. And now he looked up at me, his eyes wet with self-pity. Now she's in a coma, and you are here stripping the flesh off my bones. You did not visit her. I said. You were drinking champagne. I had to keep up appearances, he argued. The investors were watching. If I looked weak, the deal would collapse. I had to celebrate. I had to pretend everything was fine. And if she wakes up, I asked. It was the trap. I laid it gently right at his feet. Derek looked at me. He blinked. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. She can't, he muttered. Excuse me. I mean, he caught himself, but the words were already in the air, heavy and damning. I mean, if she wakes up right now in the middle of this mess with the boat seized and the accounts frozen, she will ask questions. She will look at the records. He looked me dead in the eye, and the mask slipped completely. If she wakes up, Violet, everything becomes complicated. The timeline doesn't work. The insurance investigation starts. The lenders come for me. It is better if she rests just for a little while longer until I can fix this. I felt a chill go through me that was colder than the ICU. He hadn't just said it was complicated. He had implied that her consciousness was an inconvenience. He preferred her in a coma. It bought him time. I nodded slowly. I had what I needed. I didn't need a confession of murder. I needed a confession of motive. I needed proof that his interests were directly opposed to her survival. "Thank you, Derek," I said. "You have been very clear." I turned to leave. "Wait," he said. He stepped forward. "You are not going to the police with this. It is circumstantial. You have nothing." "I have enough," I said. He moved toward me. It was a subtle shift, a tensing of his shoulders from the doorway. Caleb cleared his throat. It was a deep rumble of a sound. He stepped into the light, his hands loose at his sides, his gaze locked on Derek. Derek stopped. He looked at Caleb, then back at me. He saw the calculation in my eyes. He realized that any physical move he made would end very badly for him. "Get out," Derek hissed. "Get out of my house." "It is a rental," I said, "and since you have no money, I imagine you will be evicted from here soon, too." We left him standing in the ruin of his temporary life in the car. Caleb handed me a small digital recorder. "Did you get it?" "I got it," I said. He admitted the drugging was to keep her compliant. He admitted her waking up is a threat to him. That is enough for the civil suit. Is it enough for the cops? "It helps," Caleb said, "but without the chemical analysis of the powder or a witness to him tampering with the car, a good lawyer can spin it. He will say he was a desperate husband making bad choices, not a killer. Then we make sure he doesn't get a good lawyer." I said I was wrong about that. 2 days later, at the preliminary hearing for the emergency guardianship and asset freeze, the doors of the courtroom opened and in walked Cole Sutter. My heart sank. Cole Sutter was not a strip mall attorney. He was a shark in a $3,000 bespoke suit. He was the kind of lawyer who defended pharmaceutical companies when their drugs caused heart failure. He was the kind of lawyer who got senators acquitted of bribery charges on technicalities. He cost $700 an hour minimum. Derek Vaughan, who couldn't buy a Metro card 2 days ago, had somehow retained one of the most expensive defense attorneys in New York. "Who is paying him?" I whispered to Mara as we sat at the plaintiff's table. "I do not know," Mara said, her face grim. "But whoever it is, they have deep pockets and they want Derek protected." The hearing was brutal. I took the stand. I testified about the loans, the power of attorney, the yacht, the lack of hospital visits. I played the recording of Derek saying, "If she wakes up, everything becomes complicated." It felt damning. It felt like a slam dunk. Then Cole Sutter stood up. He didn't shout. He smiled. He looked at the judge, a tired man named Justice Galloway, with an expression of shared weary wisdom. "Your Honor," Sutter began, his voice smooth as oil, "Miss Holmes is clearly a grieving sister. We empathize with her pain, but let us look at the facts, not the emotions." He walked over to the podium. "My client is a businessman who made risky investments. Is that a crime? No, that is capitalism. He took out loans, legal loans. He obtained a power of attorney from his wife because she was suffering from fatigue that we now know was likely the precursor to her medical episode. He was trying to protect their estate." He turned to me. "MS. Holmes, you claim my client drugged his wife. Do you have a toxicology report identifying a specific poison?" The doctors found hypoglycemia," Sutter interrupted, "which can be caused by a dozen natural factors, including the very fatigue she was complaining of." "Do you have a video of him spiking her drink?" "Do you have the bottle?" "No, but you claim he tampered with the car." "Do you have a mechanic's report stating the brake lines were cut?" "Do you have a witness?" "No." "So what you have," Sutter said, spreading his hands wide, "is a financial mess, a tragic accident, and a husband who is being persecuted by a wealthy, powerful family who never thought he was good enough for their daughter." He turned back to the judge. "This is not a murder plot, Your Honor. This is a witch hunt. MS. Holmes has seized my client's assets based on paranoia. She has left him destitute. She is using her corporate resources to bully a man whose wife is fighting for her life." He paused for effect. "Everything they have presented is circumstantial. Every single piece of it, and on the basis of maybe and what if they have destroyed a man's life." I watched the judge. He was nodding slowly. Mr. Sutter makes a compelling point regarding the evidence threshold for the asset seizure, Justice Galloway said, while Mr. Van's financial conduct is concerning the accusation of attempted murder is a leap the court cannot take without physical evidence. I felt the blood drain from my face. We were losing. We had the truth, but they had the narrative. Cole Sutter smirked at me. It was a tiny, imperceptible movement of his lips. I looked at Derek. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the back of the courtroom. I turned around, sitting in the last row in the shadows. Was the man in the suit, the man from the boat, the man with the scar. He wasn't watching the judge. He was watching Derek. And suddenly, I knew who was paying for Cole Sutter. Derek wasn't the client. Derek was the loose end, and they had hired the best lawyer in the city, not to save him, but to keep him quiet. The courtroom air was stale, recycled, and smelled faintly of floor wax and expensive cologne. It was the scent of a system designed to strip the emotion out of tragedy and reduce human life to a series of permissible or inadmissible facts. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped so tightly together that my knuckles were white. Beside me, Mara Kingsley was scribbling furiously on a legal pad, her jaw set in a hard line. Jonas Pike was leaning back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, calculating odds that were rapidly dropping. Cole Sutter, Derek's high-priced defense attorney, was standing at the podium. He looked like he had been born in that suit. He radiated a calm, predatory confidence that made my stomach turn. "Your Honor," Sutter said, his voice filling the room without being loud. "We are 3 hours into this hearing, and what do we have? We have speculation. We have a grieving sister who is understandably looking for someone to blame. We have a financial record that shows my client was struggling. Yes, but since when is debt a precursor to murder?" He turned to look at Derek. Derek was putting on the performance of a lifetime. He was sitting with his head bowed, a tissue clutched in his hand. He wore a dark navy suit that was modest, almost somber. He sniffled at exactly the right intervals. He looked broken. He looked like a man who had almost lost his wife and was now being persecuted by her cold corporate sister. "The plaintiff claims Mr. Vaughan poisoned his wife," Sutter continued, gesturing vaguely toward our table. "But they have no poison. They claim he tampered with her car, but they have no cut brake lines. They have text messages about a green drink. Your Honor, if drinking a kale smoothie is grounds for an attempted murder investigation, half of Manhattan should be in handcuffs." A few people in the gallery chuckled. The judge, Justice Galloway, did not smile, but he did not stop them either. "Objection," Morris said, standing up. "Counsel is trivializing the evidence. The toxicology report indicates a massive insulin spike." "Sustained," Galloway said, peering over his glasses. "Stick to the facts, Mr. Sutter." "The facts are all I want, Your Honor," Sutter said smoothly. "And the fact is, the prosecution has failed to place a weapon in my client's hand. They have failed to place him at the scene of the accident. They are asking this court to destroy a man's life based on a theory." He sat down. I felt a cold sweat prickling at the back of my neck. He was winning. He wasn't winning on the truth, but he was winning on the procedure. "Call your next witness," Galloway said. We called Dr. Evan Hart, Mara announced. Dr. Hart took the stand. He looked uncomfortable. He was a surgeon, a man of science, not a performer. He adjusted his glasses and swore to tell the truth. Mara walked him through the medical findings efficiently, the bruising, the internal bleeding, and then the blood work. "Dr. Hart," Mara asked, "can you explain to the court what you found in Mrs. Vaughan's blood panel upon admission?" "We found a glucose level of 32, Hart said clearly, and a correspondingly high level of insulin that did not match her body's natural production capabilities. The septide test confirmed the insulin was exogenous. It came from outside her body. In your professional opinion, could this level of hypoglycemia cause a driver to lose consciousness?" "Absolutely," Hart said. "At that level, cognitive function ceases. She would have blacked out before she even realized what was happening." "Thank you," Mara said. "Your witness." Sutter stood up. He didn't walk to the podium this time. He walked right up to the witness box, invading Hart's space just enough to be intimidating. "Dr. Hart," Sutter said pleasantly. You stated the insulin was exogenous. That means it was injected or ingested. Correct. Correct. Did you see my client inject her? No. Did you see my client feed her anything? No. Is it possible, Sutter asked, leaning on the railing, that a person could take insulin themselves, perhaps by accident or perhaps for weight loss? It is a known trend in certain circles. Is it not? Hart hesitated. It is medically possible for someone to self-administer. Yes, but given her history. Thank you, doctor. Sutter cut him off. And let us talk about the hypoglycemia itself. Is it possible for a severe infection or a tumor to cause similar readings? It is rare, but yes or no. Doctor, is it possible? It is possible, Hart admitted, looking defeated. So Sutter turned to the judge, spreading his hands. We have a medical condition that could be self-inflicted, accidental or natural. We have no witness to a crime. We have no weapon. We have nothing. Doctor, Hart stepped down. He looked at me as he walked past, his eyes apologetic. I nodded at him. It wasn't his fault. The law required certainty and medicine dealt in probabilities. Justice Galloway cleared his throat. He looked at his watch. MS. Kingsley, the judge said, addressing Maurer. Mr. Pike, I am going to be frank with you. You are asking for an extended injunction on Mr. Van's assets and a referral for a criminal grand jury. The bar for that is high. You have shown me that Mr. Vaughan is a bad financial manager. You have shown me that his wife had a medical episode. You have not connected the two. Your Honor, we have the motive, Jonas argued, standing up. The insurance policy, the debt. Motive is not a crime, Galloway said sharply. Lots of people have debt. Lots of people have life insurance if you do not have direct evidence linking him to the act of harming her or evidence of a conspiracy to do so. I am inclined to lift the asset freeze and dismiss the petition for criminal inquiry. I will give you until tomorrow morning to present something substantive. Otherwise, Mr. Vorm walks out of here with his checkbook and his freedom. He banged the gavel. Court is in recess until 9:00 a.m. I watched Derek. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. He didn't look at me. He looked at Cole Sutter and shook his hand. It was a firm, confident handshake. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I walked out of the courtroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a countdown. We had fewer than 20 hours. We retreated to a small coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse. It was raining outside, a gray, miserable drizzle that matched my internal landscape. We sat at a corner booth. Mara looked furious. Jonas looked tired. He is going to get away with it, I said. My voice was hollow. He is going to walk and then he is going to pull the plug on her. He cannot pull the plug, Mara said aggressively, stirring her tea. The guardianship hearing is separate. We can still fight for control of her medical care, but he will have the money. I said he will have the resources to fight us for years, and he will vanish. He will take the insurance payout when she goes, and he will disappear onto an island somewhere. We need a link, Jonas said, rubbing his temples. We need to bridge the gap between the debt and the accident. The judge is right. We have smoke, but we do not have fire. I looked out the window. People were rushing by with umbrellas, living their normal lives. I hated them. I hated their ignorance. I hated that the world kept spinning while my sister was lying in a bed, suspended between life and death with her husband waiting to cash the check. I failed her, I whispered. I thought I was so smart. I thought I could outmaneuver him with money and logic. But logic does not work against a liar who pays for $700 an hour shield. My phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. I looked down. It was Calla. I picked it up. Tell me you have something, Calla. Because we are sinking. Do not speak, Khaled said. His voice was different. It wasn't his usual calm, detached tone. It was breathless. He was moving. Put me on speaker. Are the lawyers there? Yes, I said, hitting the button. We are all here. I am at the precinct. Khaled said, I have someone with me. You remember Rodriguez, the technician from the marina, the one who was too scared to talk? I asked. He is not scared of Derek anymore. Khaled said he is scared of the police. I showed him the photos of the scuttled boat. I told him that if he didn't come forward now, he would be charged as an accessory to insurance fraud and destruction of evidence. He cracked. Is he willing to testify? Johners asked, leaning into the phone. Better, Khaled said. He has insurance of his own. There was a rustling sound on the line, like a phone being passed. Then a click. A new voice filled the small booth. It was tiny, recorded, and slightly distorted by wind, but it was unmistakable. I do not care about the regulations, man. Just do it. It was Derek. Mr. Vaughan, I cannot just wipe the lubs. Another voice. Rodriguez said, the system keeps a backup. If the Coast Guard checks, then swap the unit. Derek's voice snapped. It was angry, desperate. Rip the whole thing out. Put in a new one. I need the history gone. I need it to look like this boat has been sitting at the dock for the last 2 weeks. Can you do it or not? It will cost you double. I will pay you triple. Just make sure that if anyone looks at that GPS, it shows I was nowhere near the water on October 22nd. The recording ended. I stared at the phone. My heart had started beating again, a hard thumping rhythm. October 22nd, I whispered. That was the day before the accident. Exactly, Khaled said, coming back on the line. He wasn't just hiding a future trip. He was hiding a past trip. He took the boat out the day before Haley crashed. He met someone. The man in the suit, I said. I identified him, Khaled said. I ran facial recognition through an old contact at the FBI. His name is Victor Violov. He is not a loan shark. Violet. He is a broker. A broker for what? Identities, Khaled said. Passports, clean slates. He specializes in making rich people disappear when the heat gets too high. Derek wasn't paying off a debt. He was buying a new life. He was going to run. Mara said, her eyes widening. He was going to kill her for the insurance money, pay Volkov for a new identity, and vanish. And here is the kicker, Khaled said. Rodriguez says Derek came back to the boat after the accident to check if the job was done. He was frantic. He told Rodriguez, the timeline moved up. I need the boat ready to move by Tuesday. Tuesday, I said. That is tomorrow. This establishes premeditation, Jonas said, grabbing his briefcase. This proves he was taking steps to conceal his movements and flee the jurisdiction immediately following the death of his wife. It destroys the grieving husband act. It destroys the accident theory. Flight is evidence of guilt, and tampering with the GPS is a felony. Mara added, we can get the judge to admit this. It is a direct action taken by the defendant to obstruct justice. Get back to the courthouse. Khaled said, I am bringing Rodriguez and the raw audio file. We are 5 minutes away. I stood up. The despair that had crushed me 2 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a cold, burning purpose. Let us go, I said. We ran back to the courthouse in the rain. I didn't care that my coat was soaking wet. I didn't care that my hair was plastered to my forehead. We filed an emergency motion to introduce new evidence because the hearing technically wasn't closed. It was just in recess. Justice Galloway agreed to review it in chambers before formally reconvening. When we walked back into the courtroom, an hour later, the atmosphere had shifted. Cole Sutter looked annoyed. He checked his watch, tapping his foot. Derek looked bored. He was scrolling on his phone, probably checking the news. Confident that he had won, Justice Galloway entered. He did not look tired and more. He looked angry. Mr. Sutter, the judge said, his voice booming. Please approach the bench. Sutter walked up, his confidence wavering slightly as he saw the expression on the judge's face. Mara walked up beside him. They spoke in hushed tones for 2 minutes. I watched Derek. He looked up, sensing the shift. He saw Sutter's shoulders tense. He saw Mara hand a flash drive to the clerk. Sutter stepped back, his face pale. He looked at Derek. It wasn't a look of reassurance. It was a look of assessment. He was calculating how much damage control he would have to do. We are reconvening on the record. Galloway said, the plaintiff has submitted digital evidence and a sworn affidavit from a witness, Mr. Hector Rodriguez, regarding the defendant's solicitation to tamper with navigation records and destroy evidence. Derek froze. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the table. This evidence, the judge continued, staring directly at Derek, suggests a concerted effort to conceal movements and prepare for flight. It directly contradicts the defendant's claim of being a stable, grieving spouse. Therefore, the motion to lift the asset freeze is denied. Furthermore, I am granting the plaintiff's request to refer this evidence to the District Attorney's Office for immediate investigation into insurance fraud, tampering with evidence, and other related charges. Derek stood up. "That is a lie." "I never sit down, Mr. Vaughan," Galloway barked, "or I will have you held in contempt. You are to surrender your passport immediately. You are not to leave the state of New York, and you are to have zero contact with the victim or her medical team." Sutter grabbed Derek's arm and yanked him down into the chair. "Shut up," I saw him mouth. "Just shut up." I let out a breath I'd been holding for days. We had done it. We hadn't convicted him of murder yet. That was still a battle to come. But we had cut his legs off. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. And now the police had a reason to dig. I looked across the aisle. Derek was staring at me. There was no sadness in his eyes now, just pure unadulterated hatred. I stared back. I didn't flinch. My phone rang. It was loud in the quiet courtroom. People turned to look. The judge frowned. I scrambled to silence it, but I saw the caller ID, Harbor East ICU. My heart stopped. I looked at Mara. She nodded. "Answer it." I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, ignoring the bailiff's glare. I pressed the phone to my ear. "This is Violet. MS. Olms." It was Tanya, the nurse. Her voice was high, urgent. "You need to get here." "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Did she crash?" "No," Tanya said. "She moved. We were changing her dressing, and she squeezed my hand hard, and her heart rate is reacting to sound. The doctor is in there now. He says she is surfacing. She is trying to wake up." I dropped the phone. I didn't bother to pick it up. I turned and ran. I ran out of the courthouse, past the security guards, out into the rain. I ran toward my car. Derek had said it himself. If she wakes up, everything becomes complicated. Well, it was about to get very complicated because the only witness who knew the whole truth, the only person who had tasted the poison and looked into his eyes as he handed it to her, was coming back, and she was going to burn him to the ground. The run from the parking lot to the intensive care unit was a blur of fluorescent lights and squeaking rubber soles. I do not remember taking the elevator. I do not remember swiping my visitor badge. I only remember the sound of my own breathing, ragged and desperate. As I burst through the double doors of the unit, Tanya Briggs was standing outside room 304. She put a hand on my chest to stop my momentum. "Easy," she whispered, her voice firm but kind. "She is fragile. Violet, the stimulation needs to be low. No screaming, no crying. Just be there." I nodded, swallowing the lump of terror and hope that had lodged in my throat. I smoothed my wet hair. I took a deep breath that tasted of antiseptic and rain. Then I pushed the door open. The room was dim. The rhythmic hissing of the ventilator was gone, replaced by the softer, more irregular sound of natural breathing. Though she was still on supplemental oxygen, Haley was looking at the window. She turned her head slowly as I entered. Her movement was fluid but heavy, like she was moving through deep water. Her eyes, usually so bright and full of mischief, were dark and unfocused, but they were open, and when they locked onto mine, I saw recognition. "Bye," she croaked. It was barely a sound. It was a vibration of air against dry vocal cords. I rushed to the side of the bed and fell into the plastic chair, grabbing her hand. It was warm. "I am here. I am right here." She blinked. A slow, deliberate motion. She squeezed my fingers. It was weak, a ghost of a grip, but it was there. "Water," she whispered. I grabbed the sponge stick from the cup of ice chips and wet her lips. She sighed, a sound of pure relief. Then her eyes darted around the room. She looked at the door. She looked at the empty chair in the corner. She looked back at me. Her expression tightened. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. "Is he—" She started, but her voice broke. "No," I said instantly, understanding exactly who she meant. "He is not here. He has not been here." Her shoulders dropped. The tension left her body, replaced by a profound, exhaustion-soaked relief. She closed her eyes for a moment, and a single tear leaked out, tracking through the dust of her ordeal. "Good," she whispered. I leaned in close, my voice a fierce whisper. "Haley, you are safe. I promise you. I have lawyers. I have security coming. He cannot get near you. He cannot touch you." She opened her eyes again. The fog was lifting, revealing something hard and sharp underneath. "He tried He tried to stop me." "I know," I said, stroking her hair. "I know about the sugar. I know about the accident. We are handling it." She shook her head slightly. "Not just the accident, the crash. That was the end, but he started months ago." I stayed with her for an hour before the doctors kicked me out to run neurological assessments. I used that time to turn the hospital wing into a fortress. I called Mara Kingsley. "She is awake. She is lucid." "Does he know?" Mara asked. "No, and he cannot know. If he finds out she is talking, he will run or he will do something desperate. I will get an emergency gag order on the medical staff." Mara said HIPAA privacy protections are already in place, but we will add a layer. No updates to the husband. We will claim it is critical deterioration if he asks. "I want guards," I said. "Armed way ahead of you," Mara replied. "I have a private security firm en route. 2 men at the door, 247. Nobody gets in without your biometric approval." By the time I was allowed back into the room, 2 men in dark suits who looked like they chewed gravel for breakfast were stationed outside the door. I nodded to them and went inside. Haley was sitting up slightly, propped by pillows. She looked terrible, bruised, gaunt, her skin waxy, but her mind was sharpening by the minute. The doctor said her cognitive functions were intact. A miracle given the trauma. I pulled the chair close. "Haley, you do not have to talk about it yet. You can rest." "I cannot rest," she said. Her voice was stronger now, raspy but determined. "I have been sleeping for a week. I need to get this out before I forget the details." She looked at the ceiling, gathering her thoughts. "He changed. Violet, about 6 months ago. He stopped looking at me. He started looking through me. He was always on his phone, always talking about leverage and timelines." "We know about the debts," I said softly. "We know about the gambling." "It wasn't just gambling," she said. "He was buying things, expensive things, not for us, for himself. Watches, suits, and that powder." My stomach tightened. "The green drink. He called it vitality," she said, a bitter smile twisting her lips. "He was so sweet about it. He would bring it to me in bed. He said I looked tired. He said I needed nutrients for the baby." I froze. "The baby." Haley looked down at her stomach, her hand hovering over the hospital blanket, her eyes filled with tears again. "I was pregnant. She whispered. 8 weeks. We hadn't told anyone yet. We wanted to wait for the first trimester scan." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Did he know?" "Yes," she said. "I told him the day before he started giving me the drinks. He looked panicked. He said it was bad timing. He said we weren't ready financially. But then the next day he came home with the powder and said he wanted to take care of me." I felt a surge of nausea so violent I had to grip the bed rail to stay upright. He hadn't just drugged his wife. He had drugged his pregnant wife. He had tried to kill his own unborn child because it was a financial liability. I lost it. "Didn't I?" she asked, looking at me. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The trauma from the crash, the surgery. "I am so sorry." Ibs. She didn't cry. She just stared at the wall, her expression hardening into something akin to stone. "I knew," she said. "Toward the end. The dizziness wasn't normal. I would drink the shake, and 20 minutes later my hands would shake. I would get confused. I would forget words." "Why did you keep drinking it?" "Because I trusted him," she said simply. "And then I didn't." She turned to look at me, her eyes intense. 2 days before the crash, he left his laptop open. He was in the shower. I never check his things. You know me. I respect privacy. But something instinct made me look. "What did you see?" He hadn't closed his tabs. She said he had been searching for symptoms of severe hypoglycemia, how to induce insulin shock and accidental death payout timelines. "Oh God," I whispered. I tried to forward the history to myself. Haley said, "But he has keyloggers on everything. If I sent an email, he would know." If I used the cloud, he would get a notification. So what did you do? I am a photographer. Why, she said, I capture things. I document. She reached out and grabbed my arm. The underwater housing. The one for the Canon R5. The big orange case. The gift. I asked, confused. I brought it. It is in the car. No. She shook her head. Not the new one. The old one. The scratched one I keep on the shelf in the studio at the townhouse. The one I told him was broken. I know it, I said. What about it? I took photos of his screen with my macro lens, she said. I took photos of the receipts I found in his jacket pocket. Receipts for the insulin. Receipts from the guy named Vilov. I recorded him. I put a voice recorder under the sofa cushion when he had his friends over. He talked about the deadline. He talked about the boat. Where is it? I demanded. Where are the files? I couldn't leave them on the computer, she said. So I put them on an SD card, a 64 GB SanDisk. I put it inside the O-ringed seal of the broken underwater housing. He never touches my gear. He thinks it is just joke. It is in the townhouse, I said. In the studio. Go get it, she said. Get it before he realizes I am awake and tries to burn the house down. I stood up. I am going. The guards are here. Do not sleep. Do not eat anything unless Tenor gives it to you. I am done sleeping, Haley said. Go bury him, Violet. I drove to the townhouse like a woman possessed. I had the legal authority to enter now, thanks to the court order granting me temporary conservatorship over the property. I let myself in. The house was still eerie, silent, and sanitized. I ran up the stairs to the third floor where Haley had her studio. It was a mess of tripods, lights, and backdrops, the only room Derek hadn't bothered to clean because he likely never set foot in it. I scanned the shelves. There, between a stack of National Geographic magazines and a broken strobe light, was the orange underwater housing. It was dusty. I grabbed it. I unscrewed the heavy plastic latches. Pop, pop, pop. I pulled the back open. I ran my finger along the black rubber O-ring that kept the water out. There, tucked into the groove, was a tiny black square, the SD card. I pulled it out and held it up to the light. It looked like a piece of plastic. It felt like a weapon. I called Caleb. Meet me at the office. I have the smoking gun. An hour later, in the secure conference room of Stonebridge Meridian, Caleb inserted the card into a reader connected to an air-gapped laptop. Mara and Jonas stood behind us. The folder structure appeared on the screen. Haley had named the folder Seagrass Textures Raw. Caleb clicked it open. It wasn't Seagrass. There were 52 files. The first dozen were higher-resolution photographs of a computer screen. The text was crystal clear. Search history. Lethal insulin dose for 100 female. Search history. CLRB navigation system bypass. Search history. Non-extradition countries with beach access. Jesus. Jonas muttered. He Googled how to kill her. We scrolled down. There were photos of physical documents. A crumpled receipt from a pharmacy in Mexico for Humalog insulin 10 vials. A handwritten note on a napkin that read transfer 2M to Vilov by Nov1. Boat leaves Nov2. November 1st, I said, that is next week. Then came the audio files. Caleb clicked play on the one dated October 21st. The sound was muffled at first, then cleared up. It sounded like it was recorded from inside a pocket or under fabric. I am telling you, she is getting weaker. Derek's voice said. He sounded impatient. She can barely walk straight in the mornings. It is working. A second voice, deep and accented, Vilov responded. Do not rush it. If she crashes too early, the autopsy will show the levels. You need it to look like a faint. I cannot wait. Derek snapped. The bank is calling every day. I need the payout. I'm going to up the dose on Thursday. Then I will put her in the car and tell her to drive to the pharmacy. She will pass out before she hits the intersection. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the laptop fan. He just confessed, Mara whispered. He just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. He laid out the plan. He laid out the method. He put her in the car, I said, my voice shaking with rage. He didn't just let her drive. He told her to drive. He sent her to her death. Jonas straightened his tie. He looked like a man who had just been handed a royal flush. "This is it," Jones said. "This is not circumstantial. This is direct evidence recorded by the victim. It authenticates the search history. It authenticates the motive. It connects via love." "What do we do?" I asked. "We do not wait for the police," Jones said. "We go back to Justice Galloway. We file an emergency motion to reopen the evidentiary hearing immediately. We get a warrant for Derek's arrest issued from the bench." "Can we do that tonight for this?" Jones smiled, a shark-like grin. "I will wake the judge up myself." We moved fast. The motion was filed electronically at 7 p. The clerk flagged it as exigent circumstances. At 8:30 p. my phone rang. It was not the judge. It was Cole Sutter, Derek's lawyer. I put it on speaker. "Ms. Holmes," Sutter said. He didn't sound smooth anymore. He sounded breathless. "We just received electronic service of your new filing. I assume this is some kind of mistake." "No mistake, Mr. Sutter," I said coolly. "You are claiming to have audio recordings?" Sutter asked of my client. "Recorded without his consent. That is inadmissible in actually." Jones cut in, leaning over the phone. "New York is a one-party consent state, Cole, and since the recording device was placed in the marital home by a resident of that home for the purpose of protecting herself from domestic violence, it is fully admissible. We have case law. Would you like the citations?" Silence on the line. "Is he with you, Cole?" I asked. "Is Derek there?" "I cannot discuss my client's location," Sutter said. But I heard the hesitation. "Tell him something for me," I said. "Tell him that Haley is awake." A gasp, not from Sutter, but from someone in the background. "She is awake," I continued, my voice hard as diamond. "She remembers the green drink. She remembers the laptop, and she remembers you telling her to drive to the pharmacy. Violet, wait." Derek's voice came onto the line. He sounded frantic, hysterical. "Let me explain. The recording it is out of context. It was a screenplay. We were rehearsing a scene. Save it for the jury." "Derek," I said, "the police are on their way to your apartment. They have the warrant, and this time Bulov cannot help you." I hung up. I looked at the team. "He is going to run," Khaled said. "He knows it is over." "Let him try," I said. "Every airport in the tri-state area has his face on a screen by now. His passports are flagged. His accounts are zero. He has nowhere to go but down." I stood up. I needed to go back to the hospital. I needed to tell Haley that the war was over. We had won, but as I walked out of the building, I looked at the night sky. It wasn't over. Not yet. Because a cornered animal is most dangerous right before it dies. And Derek Bourne had one last card to play, even if it was a suicide card. The final hearing did not begin with a bang. It began with the squeak of rubber wheels on a marble floor. The courtroom was packed. The press had caught wind of the socialite yacht poisoning scandal, and the gallery was a sea of reporters and curious onlookers. Derek sat at the defense table, looking pale but composed. His suit was freshly pressed. Cole Sutter was whispering in his ear, likely assuring him that without a direct witness to the car crash, they could plead down to simple fraud. Then the double doors at the back of the room swung open. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I walked in first, and behind me, pushed by a caught baith, was Haley. She was in a wheelchair, a blanket over her lap. She looked fragile, her skin still bearing the yellowing fade of bruises, a bandage still taped to her throat where the central line had been, but her head was up. Her eyes were clear. I looked at Derek. The color drained from his face, so fast it looked like a physical blow. His mouth opened slightly, then snapped shut. He gripped the edge of the table. He had convinced himself she was brain damaged. He had convinced himself she was a vegetable. He was looking at a ghost, and the ghost was looking back with eyes of steel. The prosecution calls Haley carrion. Jonas Pike announced Haley was wheeled to the witness box. She declined the offer to have the courtroom cleared. She wanted him to see her. She wanted everyone to see her. "Mrs. Carrion," Jonas began gently, "do you recognize the defendant?" "He is my husband," Haley said. Her voice was raspier than before, but it carried to the back of the room without a microphone. "Derek Vaughan, can you tell the court what happened on the morning of October 23rd? "I woke up," Haley said. "I felt dizzy. I had felt dizzy for weeks. Derek told me I looked pale. He went to the kitchen and made me a drink, a green smoothie. He said it was vitality. He said it would help the baby. A ripple of confusion went through the gallery. The baby, I bit my lip. Knowing what was coming, I drank it. Haley continued, because I trusted him. 10 minutes later, I felt like the floor was tilting. My hands started to shake. I told him I needed to lie down. He told me no. He told me I had to go to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription for him. He said it was urgent. He put the keys in my hand. He walked me to the car. He put you in the car, Jonas clarified. He opened the door, Haley said, staring directly at Derek. He buckled my seat belt. He told me to drive. I told him I couldn't see straight. He said, just go, Haley. It is only 5 minutes. The last thing I remember is the traffic light turning red and my hands going numb on the wheel. Objection. Cole Sutter stood up, though he looked less confident than before. The witness has suffered severe head trauma. Her memory is compromised. She is confabulating. I am not confabulating, Haley cut in before the judge could rule. I documented it. Jonas nodded to the clerk. The projection screen descended. Your Honor, Jonas said, we submit into evidence the contents of the SD card recovered from the plaintiff's home, specifically the metadata. The screen lit up. It showed the file directory found in the underwater camera housing. This is not just a photo, our forensic expert testified a moment later. This is a raw image file. It contains unalterable metadata. The date of creation October 21st. The subject, a laptop screen. The image of Derek's Google search history filled the room. Lethal insulin dose. How to mask hypoglycemia. And this audio file, Jonas continued, recorded on October 22nd. The courtroom listened as Derek's voice, clear and irritated, echoed from the speakers. I'm going to up the dose on Thursday. Then I will put her in the car. She will pass out before she hits the intersection. Derek sank lower in his chair. He put his head in his hands. Sutter was frantically tapping on his tablet, looking for a loophole that didn't exist. Mr. Sutter, Justice Galloway said, his voice like thunder. Do you have a cross-examination? Sutter stood up. He looked at the screen. He looked at Haley. This is Carrion. Is it possible that you were researching these things for a project? You are an artist. Perhaps a story about murder. I take photos of jellyfish. Mr. Sutter, Haley said dryly. I do not research bioweapons. But the trauma, Sutter tried again. The trauma, Haley interrupted, is the only reason I'm alive because the crash happened too soon. If I had stayed home and finished that drink, I would be dead in my bed and he would have claimed it was natural causes. Sutter sat down. He knew it was over, but we weren't done. The prosecution calls Elena Petrova, Jonas announced. The doors opened again. Derek's head snapped up. The woman from the yacht photo walked in. She wasn't wearing a bikini and holding champagne anymore. She was wearing a gray pants suit and looking at the floor. She had been arrested the night before on charges of money laundering, and she had taken a plea deal faster than Derek could blink. Ms. Petrova, Jonas said, what is your relationship to the defendant? I am a broker, she said. Her accent was thick. Eastern European. I work for Victor Vielov. We facilitate asset liquidation and relocation. Did Mr. Law hire you? Yes. He paid us a retainer of $50,000. He wanted a new identity, passport, residency in a non-extradition country, and he wanted to move a large sum of money. How much money? $6 million, she said. He told us the funds would be available by November 1st. He said his wife's life insurance policy had a double indemnity clause for accidental death. He was very specific about the accidental part. He needed the police report to be clean. Did he mention his wife? He said she was an obstacle. Elena said cold. He said the asset is expiring soon. He talked about her like she was a stock option. The gallery erupted. The judge banged his gavel, his face red with fury. Order! Galloway shouted. Order in this court. Derek stood up. He couldn't help himself. The pressure cooker had exploded. I didn't mean to kill her, he screamed. The room went dead silent. Derek looked around, realizing what he had just done, but he couldn't stop. The dam had broken. I didn't want her dead, he yelled. tears streaming down his face. Tears of self-pity, not remorse. I just wanted the money. I was in a hole. Violov was going to kill me. I needed the insurance. If she just went to sleep and didn't wake up, it would have been painless. I loved her. I did it for us. You did it for yourself, I said from the plaintiff's table. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. Mr. Vaughan, Justice Galloway said, his voice dangerously quiet. Did you just confess to administering a substance to your wife with the intent to cause her death, to collect insurance money? Derek stammered. He looked at Sutter. Sutter had closed his laptop. He was staring at the wall. It wasn't just a business decision. I was going to lose the house. You are going to lose a lot more than the house. The judge said the sentencing hearing was immediate because Derek was a flight risk with connections to identity brokers. His bail was revoked instantly. The judge didn't hold back. Derek Vaughan, Justice Galloway said, looking down from the bench. In my 30 years on the bench, I have seen crimes of passion and I have seen crimes of greed, but I have rarely seen a crime so calculated, so intimate in its betrayal. You used your wife's trust as a weapon. You used her body as a piggy bank. I sentence you to 25 years to life for attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and tampering with evidence. Furthermore, I am granting the full forfeit of all assets to the victim. You are stripped of your marital rights. You are stripped of your dignity. Derek was handcuffed. He looked at Haley one last time as the marshals dragged him away. He looked small. He didn't look like a businessman or a charmer. He looked like exactly what he was, a bad investment. Haley didn't look at him. She was looking at me. We left the courthouse through the back exit to avoid the press. The rain had started again, washing the city clean. We sat in the back of the town car, watching the buildings blur by. Haley was quiet. She was holding her stomach again. It wasn't just the money, she whispered. I know, I said. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a grief that went deeper than the ocean she loved to photograph. I lost the baby. Vi, she said. The doctor told me when I woke up. The trauma of the crash, the shot to my system, my body couldn't hold on. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, being careful of her ribs. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I was going to name her Marina. She sobbed into my shoulder. I didn't tell Derek. I wanted it to be a surprise, but he knew I was pregnant. He knew, and he still sent me to that car. He killed his own child. Violet. He didn't care. He cared about nothing but himself, I said, stroking her hair. But he is gone. He is in a cage. He can never hurt you again. I feel empty, she said. I know, I said, but we will fill it back up. Not with things, not with money, with life. 2 months later, the Sela Larby was sold. We didn't want it. We didn't want the memories attached to that teak deck or the champagne stains of a celebration held while Haley was bleeding. We sold it to a charter company in Florida. The proceeds, all $300,000 of it, didn't go into Haley's bank account. We started the Marina Carrion Foundation. It was a grant program for underwater photographers and ocean conservationists. It was a way to turn a vessel of betrayal into a vessel of beauty. I sat with Haley on the balcony of my parents' house in Connecticut. It was December now. The air was cold, but the sun was bright. Haley was out of the wheelchair. She was walking with a cane, but the doctor said she would be diving again by summer. She held a camera in her lap, the new one I had bought her for that ruined birthday. She was taking pictures of the birds on the feeder. You know, she said, looking through the viewfinder, I used to think you were cold. By all business, all contracts. I admitted, sipping my coffee. I thought I could control the world with spreadsheets. You saved my life, she said, lowering the camera. You didn't just win a lawsuit. You fought for me when I couldn't fight. You listened to the silence in the house. I should have listened sooner, I said. I should have listened when you sent those emails about the liquidity. I should have listened when you said you were tired. We are listening now, she said. She reached over and took my hand. We are all listening. I looked at my sister. She was scarred. She was grieving a child she never got to hold. She was a divorce at 33 with a publicized trauma. But she was alive. She was breathing. And she was free. I realized then that revenge isn't about destroying the enemy. That is just the mechanics. Revenge is about surviving the attempt to destroy you. It is about refusing to be the victim they wrote you to be. Derek Vaughan was rotting in a cell in upstate New York, worrying about his appeal. Violet Holmes and Haley Carrion were sitting in the sun, planning a trip to the Great Barrier Reef, and that truly was the best business transaction I had ever closed. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and sisterhood. If you enjoyed seeing Derek get exactly what he deserved, please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts on how Violet handled this. Don't forget to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and hit that hype button so we can share this story with even more people. Stay safe and always trust your instincts. Thanks to all.